Bonaire is an island in the Leeward Antilles in the Caribbean Sea. Together with Aruba and Curaçao, it forms the group known as the ABC Islands. Located off the north coast of South America near the western part of Venezuela. Unlike much of the Caribbean region, the ABCs lie outside the hurricane belt and have an arid climate. This helps tourism as visitors to the islands can reliably expect warm, sunny weather. Bonaire is a popular destination for scuba divers, well known for easy access to its reef from the shore. Bonaire's capital is Kralendijk. The island has a permanent population of 17,408 and an area of 294 square kilometers. Bonaire was part of the Netherlands Antilles until the country's dissolution in 2010, when the island became a special municipality within the country of the Netherlands. It is one of the three BES islands located in the Caribbean, the other two being St. Eustatius and Saba. Etymology. The name Bonaire is thought to have originally come from the Kaketiyo word, Bonai, a name that meant low country. The early Spanish and Dutch modified its spelling to Bovenage and also Bonaire. The French influence, while present at various times, never was strong enough to make the assumption that the name means good air. History. Original inhabitants. Bonaire's earliest known inhabitants were the Kaketiyo Indians, a branch of the Arawak who came by canoe from Venezuela in about 1000 AD. Archaeological remains of Kaketiyo culture have been found at certain sites northeast of Kralendijk and near Lac Bay. Kaketiyo rock paintings and petroglyphs have been preserved in caves at Spelonk, Onamas, Ceru Pungi, and Ceru Kritakabay. The Kaketiyos were apparently a very tall people, for the Spanish name for the ABC Islands was Las Islas de los Gigantes, or the Islands of the Giants. European arrival in 1499. Alonso de Ojeda arrived in Curaçao and a neighboring island that was almost certainly Bonaire. Ojeda was accompanied by Amerigo Vespucci and Juan de la Cosa. De la Cosa's Mapa Mundi of 1500 shows Bonaire and calls it Ilha do Palo Brazil, or Island of Brazilwood. The Spanish conquerors decided that the three ABC islands were useless, and in 1515 the natives were forcibly deported to work as slaves in the copper mines of Santo Domingo on the island of Hispaniola. Spanish period. In 1526 Juan de Rampes was appointed Spanish commander of the ABC Islands. He brought back some of the original Kaketiyo Indian inhabitants to Bonaire and Curaçao. Rampes also imported domesticated animals from Spain, including cows, donkeys, goats, horses, pigs, and sheep. The Spaniards thought that Bonaire could be used as a cattle plantation worked by natives. The cattle were raised for hides rather than meat. The Spanish inhabitants lived mostly in the inland town of Rincon, which was safe from pirate attack. Dutch period. The Dutch West India Company was founded in 1621. Starting in 1623, ships of the West India Company called at Bonaire to obtain meat, water, and wood. The Dutch also abandoned some Spanish and Portuguese prisoners there, and these people founded the town of Antreal, which is a contraction of al interior, or inside. The Dutch and the Spanish fought from 1568 to 1648, in what is now known as the 80 Years' War. In 1633, the Dutch, having lost the island of Saint Martin to the Spanish, retaliated by attacking Curaçao, Bonaire, and Aruba. Bonaire was conquered in March 1636. The Dutch built Fort Orange in 1639. While Curaçao emerged as a center of the slave trade, Bonaire became a plantation of the Dutch West India Company. A small number of African slaves were put to work alongside Indians and convicts, cultivating dyewood and maize and harvesting solar salt around Blue Pan. Slave quarters, built entirely of stone and too short for a man to stand upright in, still stand in the area around Rincon and along the salt pans as a grim reminder of Bonaire's repressive past. British period during the Napoleonic Wars, the Netherlands lost control of Bonaire twice, once from 1800 to 1803 and again from 1807 to 1816. During these intervals, the British had control of the neighbouring island of Curaçao and of Bonaire. The ABC Islands were returned to the Netherlands under the Anglo-Dutch Treaty of 1814. During the period of British rule, a large number of white traders settled on Bonaire, and they built the settlement of Playa in 1810. Emancipation from 1816 until 1868, Bonaire remained a government plantation. In 1825, there were about 300 government-owned slaves on the island. Gradually many of the slaves were freed, and became freemen with an obligation to render some services to the government. The remaining slaves were freed on 30 September 1862 under the Emancipation Regulation. A total of 607 government slaves and 151 private slaves were freed at that time. Allotment in 1867, the government sold most of the public lands, and in 1870 they sold the salt pans. The entire population became dependent on two large private landowners, and this caused a great deal of suffering for many people. Many inhabitants were forced to move to Aruba, Curaçao, or Venezuela. World War II. During the German occupation of the Netherlands during World War II, Bonaire was a protectorate of Britain and the United States. The American Army built the Flamingo Airport as an Air Force base. After Germany invaded the Netherlands on 10 May 1940, many German and Austrian citizens were interned in a camp on Bonaire for the duration of war. In 1944, Princess Juliana of the Netherlands and Eleanor Roosevelt visited the troops on Bonaire. Post-war, after the war, the economy of Bonaire continued to develop. The airport was converted to civilian use and the former internment camp was converted to become the first hotel on Bonaire. The Dutch Schunk family built a clothing factory known as Schunk's Kleding Industrie Bonaire. In 1964, Transworld Radio began broadcasting from Bonaire. Radio Netherlands Worldwide built two short-wave transmitters on Bonaire in 1969. The second major hotel was completed in 1962. Salt production resumed in 1966 when the salt pans were expanded and modernized by the Antilles International Salt Company, a subsidiary of the International Salt Company. The Bonaire Petroleum Corporation oil terminal was opened in 1975 for transshipping oil. Geography: Bonaire lies about 50 miles off the coast of Venezuela on the continental shelf of South America, and is thus geologically considered a part of South America. Geologists believe that Bonaire was formed relatively recently. Apparently, as the nearby continental shelf in the area moved through the area, it forced a large mass of rock to the ocean surface, creating the islands of the Lesser and Greater Antilles, including Bonaire. As the seabed rose, a vast coral reef grew on what is now dry land. As the island emerged, corals exposed to air perished, and over the millennia became surface limestone deposits. Walking along Bonaire's shores and the inland, you can see vast amounts of coral skeletons as a result. Bonaire is essentially a coral reef that has been geologically pushed up and out of the sea. This also resulted in the natural fringing reef system we see today, in which the coral formations start at the shoreline. Tidal variations are only about 1.8–2.0 feet, so the corals start at the low tide line and continue on, following the underwater topology of the island's base. Bonaire's tides are more affected by a combination of wind and low, high-pressure systems than they are by the moon. The northern end of the island is relatively mountainous, though its highest peak is only 240 meters. The southern part of the island is nearly flat and barely rising above sea level. In fact, a good portion of this southern region is covered with sea water in process of evaporation for salt production. It also contains Lac Bay with its large mangrove forest. The shoreline of Bonaire is dotted with lagoons and inlets, the largest of which is Goat Lake in the north. These lagoons and wetlands provide an excellent habitat for a wide variety of shorebirds. Bonaire has a warm, dry, and windy climate. The average temperature is 81.5 degrees Fahrenheit with a 2.5 degrees Fahrenheit seasonal variation, and 10 degrees Fahrenheit daily variation. The ocean temperature around the island fluctuates between 78 and 86 degrees Fahrenheit. The highest recorded temperature is 96.4 degrees Fahrenheit and the lowest, 67.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Winds blow from the east more than 95% of the time with an average speed of 12 knots. The humidity is very constant, averaging 76% and fluctuating between 85% and 66% on a daily basis. Average annual rainfall is 20.5 inches, most of which occurs in October through January. Bonaire lies outside the hurricane belt, though its weather and oceanic conditions are occasionally affected by hurricanes and tropical storms. This semi-arid climate is conducive to a variety of cacti and other desert plants. Klein Bonaire, the small island in the sheltered lee of the Bonaire, has the same geological history, and while Bonaire at least has some hills, Klein Bonaire's surface is pretty much level, just a few feet above high tide. And, because the island is undeveloped, the fringing reef system surrounding Klein Bonaire is truly pristine. Bonaire has a land area of 288 square kilometers, while Klein Bonaire is an additional 6 square kilometers. Washington Slagby National Park is an ecological preserve on the north side of the island. The highest point of Bonaire, Mount Branderis, 240 meters high, is located within this preserve and has a complete view of the island. Ecology: Bonaire is fringed by a coral reef which is accessible to divers from the shore along the lee side of the island. The entire coastline of the island was designated a marine sanctuary in 1979, an effort to preserve and protect the delicate coral reef and the marine life that depends on it. There are more than 350 species of fish and 60 species of coral living in Bonaire's reef. Boulder star coral is the most common coral, according to a 2011 survey. Bonaire is also famed for its flamingo populations and its donkey sanctuary. Flamingos are drawn to the brackish water of the island's lagoons, which harbors the shrimp upon which they feed. Bonaire is home to one of only 4 nesting grounds for the Caribbean flamingo. Located in the Pakelmire in the southern part of the island, no human entry is permitted in this sanctuary. In the 16th century, Europeans introduced sheep, goats, pigs, horses and donkeys on Bonaire, and the descendants of the donkeys, goats, and pigs roam the island today. Bonaire is also home to the ecologically vulnerable yellow-shouldered Amazon. Environmental initiatives: the island of Bonaire has long been a leader in nature conservation and ecological responsibility. Stichting Nationale Parken, Bonaire's National Park Foundation, was founded in 1962 for the purpose of actively protecting nature on the island. In 1969, STINAPA succeeded in establishing both the Flamingo Nesting Sanctuary and Washington National Park, the first such nature preserves in the Caribbean. In 1979, the Slagby Plantation was added to the park, now known as Washington Slagby National Park. The Bonaire National Marine Park was also established in 1979. The marine park consists of the whole coastline of Bonaire from the high water mark down to a depth of 200 feet and includes a large mangrove forest. In Lac Bay, Klein Bonaire, Pakelmire, Slagby, and Go-To-Mea are internationally recognized Ramsar sites. Due to a public-private sector partnership, programs are being developed to advance the local awareness and attitudes toward conservation and habitat preservation in order to proactively protect Bonaire's ecosystem. A new sewage treatment plant will contribute to protecting the reefs and the seawater quality. In March 2013, Cellabone NV, the national garbage processing plant, opened an environmental court where the general public can bring glass, cans, paper, scrap metal, cardboard, batteries, motor oil, cooking oil, electronics, mobile phones and textiles. Bon Recycling BV is committed to recycling waste products in Bonaire and to create awareness among the people of Bonaire about the importance and benefits of recycling. Dive Friends Bonaire started a debris-free Bonaire program that emphasizes collecting debris washed ashore and delivering it to the dive shop for separation in preparation for handling by Bon Recycling. Bonaire gets a significant amount of its electricity from an array of 12 wind generators along its northeastern coastline, which began operating in 2010. This renewable source now fills 40 to 45% of the island's electricity needs. Work continues in developing additional renewable sources of energy, including biodiesel and solar, with the goal of becoming 100% reliant on renewables. Government referendum 2010. Prior to the 2010 referendum, the Netherlands Antilles, comprising the islands of Curaçao, Bonaire, Saint Eustatius, Saint Martin and Saba, were governed as a parliamentary democracy based on the Dutch system of government with free elections held every 4 years. Dissension about the political future resulted in 4 of the 5 islands advocating for separation from the Netherlands Antilles. Some of the island residents wanted autonomy while others wanted more integration. In 2005, a conference was held by the governments of the Netherlands, Aruba, and the Netherlands Antilles to discuss future constitutional reform and dissolution of the Netherlands Antilles. In 2006, Saint Martin and Curaçao chose autonomy, and Bonaire, Saint Eustatius and Saba opted for a closer relationship with the Netherlands. Constitutional referendums and dismantlement of the Netherlands Antilles was scheduled to take place in 2010. Bonaire's announced referendum scheduled for the 26th of March 2010 was cancelled in February 2010. The governor of the Dutch Antilles, Frits Goeje-Drag, decided to cancel it because it probably contravened international law, since part of the population is barred from voting. European Dutch nationals are only allowed to vote if they arrived on the island before the 1st of January 2007. The referendum was postponed to September and then October 2010. Eventually the referendum was held on the 17th of December 2010, with 84% voting in favor of becoming part of the Netherlands. However, as the 35% voter turnout rate was below the required 51%, the results of the referendum were declared invalid. Dissolution of the Netherlands Antilles. On 10 October 2010, the Netherlands Antilles was dissolved. As a result, the government of the Netherlands assumed the task of public administration of the Caribbean Netherlands or BES islands comprising Bonaire, Saint Eustatius and Saba. The 3 islands acquired new statuses, special municipalities, making them part of the Netherlands itself, a form of public body, as outlined in Article 134 of the Dutch Constitution. 12. Special municipalities do not constitute part of a province. 13. As a special municipality, Bonaire is very much like ordinary Dutch municipalities in that it has a mayor, alderman and a municipal council, and is governed according to most Dutch law. Antillean legislation remained in force after the 10th of October 2010, with the exception of those cases where Antillean law was replaced by Bonaire's municipal law. It was believed best for the island to not introduce the entire body of Dutch legislation at one time, as it would cause confusion. Therefore, Dutch legislation is being introduced in stages. Bonaire retained its own unique culture while residents enjoy the same rights as Dutch citizens, including the right to vote in Dutch parliamentary elections in the Netherlands. Residents also have access to new or improved facilities and government benefits including, but not limited to, universal health care, improved healthcare facilities, better educational facilities with additional training for teachers, new teaching methods, and new school buildings, social housing for low-income individuals and families, a centrally dispatched single police force, fire department and ambulance service, While the three islands are considered to be land of the Netherlands, they are not a part of the European Union, therefore not subject to European Union law. They are considered to be an overseas country and territory and will remain as such until at least 2015. Bonaire's non-governmental organization, Nos Ke Bonaire, is against the current constitutional relationship with the Netherlands. With reference to Bonaire's 2004 referendum, the organization is of the opinion that such an arrangement was never the choice of the people. The Dutch Minister of Home Affairs and Kingdom Relations, Ronald Plasterk, replied to the organization confirming that only the island councils in the Caribbean Netherlands have the authority to decide on holding the constitutional referendum, not the Dutch government. In response, the organization gathered more than 3,500 signatures in 2013 favoring a new referendum. In a letter to Minister Plasterk, James Finnies, chairman of Nos Ke Bonaire, requested a new referendum under the right of self-determination. Plasterk responded by advising Finnies that preparations for the evaluation of the public entity structure have begun for 2015, but a possible change of the constitutional relations is not part of that evaluation. The new referendum will take place on the 18th of December 2015. Currency. In 2011, the BES Islands replaced their currency, the Netherlands Antillean guilder, with the US dollar rather than replacing it with the euro, which is used in the European Netherlands. The decision was based primarily on the island's needs in relation to tourism and trade. Most countries and territories in the Caribbean use the dollar as their currency or have a currency linked to the dollar as legal tender. The guilder has been linked to the dollar for decades with an exchange rate of 1 Netherlands Antillean guilder and 79 cents equals 1 United States dollar. Adopting the dollar put an end to the dual currency payment system and foreign exchange charges. Taxes. The separate tax regimes for Bonaire, St. Eustatius and Saba presents a greater risk of double taxation or double exemption from taxes. In an effort to remove the risk, two plans were introduced. One plan prevents double taxation between the Netherlands and the BES Islands, while the other prevents double taxation between the BES Islands and third countries. The new regime will generate a total annual tax revenue estimated at $52 million, which is equal to the current tax revenues on the three islands. The combined population of the three islands is approximately 20,000, with about half that many being taxpayers.